Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today we're going to dive into the root causes of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, also known as MCAS. And then on top of that, I'm going to help you figure out, where do you start? Because this can get a little confusing, a little bit overwhelming. At least that's our response over these last several years of working with people with MCAS. One, understanding it. How did it even get there? I'll dive into that a little bit today. And then also, where do we start? And then also helping understand the process and the journey that's required to help your body overcome this syndrome, which is Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. All right, with that being said, let's dive right in. And first, let me just say thank you for doing what you're doing, sharing this out. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading the love. We're reaching more people, and that's the goal here, that we're helping educate more people, empowering people about their own health, and we're trying to keep it simple, and I'll do the same thing in this podcast. My goal is just to make health simple, and so we don't have to become these doctors, personal doctors of health, in order just to live our lives in a comfortable way. So I'm glad you're here, and let's dive right in. So some of the root causes. I'm going to cover four primary topics. We're going to call them root causes, and within these four, almost everything else would fit into these categories. And then I'm going to show you exactly where we have to start, especially if you're dealing with any level. And everybody has a little bit different experience with Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. Let me start with just, again, a brief explanation of what is it? What is Mast Cell Activation Syndrome? So we have mast cells. Everybody has mast cells all throughout their body, everywhere. They're part of your immune system. They're in your skin, they're in your muscles, they're in your sinus glands, they're in your eyes, in your organs. They're everywhere. They are part of your immune system. And what they do is they help us protect. They help protect your body. And one of the methods that they do that is they use histamine. So if you're exposed to something, your body produces histamine. Histamine is part of your defense mechanism. It also has inflammatory cells. And this is how your body typically goes about every single day when you get exposed to different things, everything from a bug bite to foods or molds or toxins, you name it, a different scents that you're exposed to, perfumes, all of these things. We don't know about it because we're kind of going on with our lives, but our immune system is dealing with everything that you're exposed to. And your mast cells are everywhere. What happens is, somewhere along the way, what happens is this process called degranulation of these mast cells. Essentially what that means is that they've been so overwhelmed for such a long period of time. Sometimes there's an acute trigger, but typically it means that your cup is full. It's the rain barrel effect. More and more different things are affecting your body. It might be your food. It might be your home environment. It might be chemicals you're exposed to. It's usually all of these different things. They're building up, and eventually they degranulate the mast cells. It makes them weaker. Essentially, it's creating an environment where mast cells are becoming triggered too easily. Now they're dumping tons of histamine into the body, tons of these inflammatory cells, and then we have symptoms. That's when you show up with the skin issues, the brain fog, the fatigue, the hives. All of those different things are a result of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, which is the simple way of putting this is that your mast cells have become too sensitive. And so there's four primary ways that this is taking place. And let's dive into those. Number one, it is stress, folks. It is this normalization that we have right now of being in sympathetic dominance, this fight or flight state. And I personally think, you've heard me say it here before, if you've listened to me talk about mast cell before, Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, I truly believe a big part of this, and the reason we see so many people like yourself, if you have that, we see so many people with MCAS, is because of what took place during COVID. We had both an acute and a chronic stress environment, where the acute was like the fear. Let's say you didn't even have COVID. It was the fear that was taking place. That was a chronic stressor. And then we actually had the virus for some people. And then we had the ongoing, where's this going? Is the world coming to an end? And after that, a lot of things showed up. Clinically, one of the first things I saw was that we are having massive levels of people with anxiety that never had anxiety before. And essentially, if you have anxiety, you're stuck in sympathetic dominance. Without going too deep into that diagnosis, there really isn't anxiety is not a true disease. It's a description of what's taking place. And that description is, you're stuck in sympathetic dominance. And as a result of your nervous system being stuck there, this is how you feel. And so we started seeing this clinically across the board. more cases of anxiety than we've ever seen in 10 years prior, packed into these couple past years. So stress is the number one root cause of nervous system of mast cell activation syndrome. So that's going to have to be addressed, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in just a moment here. Number two is on a daily basis, the things that we're dealing with when it comes to food sensitivities. And this is a large topic, and it's very important for us to understand. So number one, think of the nervous system. There's some form of stress, and you are not immune to this. We get used to our bodies being in this high state of sympathetic dominance, but there's nothing normal to it. So number two is food sensitivities. And where this gets a little bit confusing is this. We have the obvious ones like dairy, like potentially eggs if you're eating commercial eggs, but dairy and gluten and sugars. And these are all triggers for your immune system. Even sugar, folks. Sugar is a toxin to the body. And when it comes in that processed form, which is like pure sugar, your immune system responds to that. And so often we'll see cortisol responses. So we know that different foods have stress response to them. The challenge is that we've had a lot of these foods in our lives, and they've really not been a big deal. Maybe you never had issues with gluten. Maybe sugar didn't really affect you. Maybe dairy didn't affect you. And all of a sudden, now they are. So we will have to address food sensitivities along the way. And here's where it gets confusing, is because a lot of the foods you used to eat can be a trigger at this point. And that, again, is because not because the food has changed, it's because the way that your body is handling, because the degranulation of those mast cells, which you also have in your stomach lining. And that's why we have a food sensitivity issue here. So number one, stress. Number two, food sensitivities. Number three is in your environment. This is a big cause for many people. And specifically when it comes to your environment, those are the things, the chemicals that we're exposed to. The forever chemicals, these are the cleaning agents. But I'm also going to throw in the category of perfumes and scents that in the past, maybe you just didn't really notice them because they didn't affect you. And now, all of a sudden, someone walks by you with strong perfume and you want to buckle. And you're like, did you smell that? Holy moly, you smell all the perfume. And the people next to you are like, nah, I didn't even notice. It's because now your body, your mast cells are hypersensitive to these different chemicals, to these different perfumes, these different colognes. And it's a real thing because now they're triggering a response in your body, and you're dumping histamine into the body, dumping these inflammatory cascades in all over the system and all over the body. And now you're having these outward, symptoms of everything from, again, skin issues to psoriasis, eczema, to brain fog, to a little bit of anything and everything, especially fatigue and things like that. All those can fall into the category of mast cell activation syndrome. All right, number four here, and this is probably almost always involved. I do not want to call it number four, but could be number one. So this was in any particular order. But number four is mycotoxins. Think of molds. And yes, pretty much every one of us are being exposed to molds on a daily basis. And it could be your house. And this is where it gets a little tricky. There's a very good chance that in your house, there are sections that have a little bit of mold, and they have different times of the day that they express themselves too, depending on the temperatures, exposure to light. And most of the time, your body handles those no problem. So we don't have to panic and be like, holy moly, do we have to have a big mold remediation? The goal here is because maybe you're not going to be able to do that. If your environment has a lot of mold and you kind of smell it when you come into the house, then yes, you may have to address this. Otherwise, you might not be able to heal up from this. But mold is almost always part of MCAS. And what happens is that we become hypersensitive to the mold. We have a super high sensitivity to the molds. And now what used to be okay is no longer okay. So we have those four major things: stress, food sensitivities, our environment, and molds. Those are our root causes, folks. And that is why this is called a syndrome. It is not a quick fix. It's not an easy thing. I'm going to just change my diet. You may change your diet. You're going to have to change your diet. And are you going to have to address stress? Yes. And are you going to have to be aware and mindful of your environment? Yeah. And what does that look like? Most likely, this means that you're going to probably have to change some of the cleaners you use in the house. You can't use all the chemicals. Most likely, subtleties of getting rid of those. We can smell. We'll go for a walk with the dogs, and we can literally smell outside 100 yards away of the people who use those. I call them like those dryer sheets, so your clothes don't wrinkle, and you can smell the chemicals 100 yards away. In the past, no big deal. But now that I see so many people with MCAS, I'm thinking, Oh, wow, that's a trigger for many people. And if you are actually still using those things at home, those are the type of things that we're going to have to start being aware of, because those chemicals are real things. Your immune system has always been responding to those, and now it's creating a trigger for your body. Instead of just an awareness, now it creates a trigger. So environment's going to have to be addressed, and then also mold. But the number one, the single place that you're going to start, and you will not be able to miss this one. I'm bringing this one up because this is, I believe, is the one that's most overlooked and most kind of put off to the side, like, yeah, I deal with that. And that is nervous system dysregulation. That is the state of your being on any given day. Now, you're listening to this and you might have all these symptoms, be like, well, I do. I get up in the morning and I meditate for 10 minutes and then I go. Your overall state of being is going to have to be addressed. If your nervous system is stuck, and here's one of the subtleties of if it's stuck. Let's just say you are on a journey right now and you're working on your health, and you're always thinking about your food, you're always thinking about your environment, and you're always thinking about the labels, and you're always thinking about the chemicals, and you're always thinking about the electronics, the EMF. You're always thinking about all these things. That's your nervous system, folks. That's part of what I'm talking about here. That's part of your system being stuck on go. And that's going to have to be addressed along the way. So that comes back to the stress component. And so I'm going to give you a real simple thing to work with here today. And of course, this is not something that you wave one magic wand and everything gets better, but any piece of this that you start to improve is going to move you in the direction of you eventually being able to overcome this. And can you overcome this? Absolutely. You can downregulate all of these hypersensitivities. So the one thing I'm going to give you today to start to work with is your breath. Control your breath and you control your nervous system. And the way we're going to approach this is this: at least 3 times a day for a minimum of 5 minutes. Yes, a minimum. I'm going to encourage you that you're going to work this up to at least 10 minutes. So you have at least 30 minutes a day. 3 different sessions of 10-minute breathing, where all you're doing is taking deep breaths in, holding your breath for about a second, and controlling your exhales to the point where you feel your body starting to let go of the stress and tension. When you do this, you swing the pendulum from your body being in sympathetic dominance into parasympathetic. That is rest, digest, recover, rebuild. That is when we heal. We're going to utilize this, and I'm going to throw one more honorable mention in here, and it is to protect your sleep. You heal when you sleep. And so we really want to protect our sleep in many categories. And there's times we can go a little bit deeper into this, recognizing when we get deep sleep and REM and the quality of sleep. But for today's purposes, in this podcast that you're taking a little time here to listen to today, is start regulating your breath. This is going to be important regardless of what else you tackle, but regulating your breath, controlling your exhale. So you take that deep breath in, preferably you're going to go in through the nose, fill up your belly and your chest. You fill everything up as much as you possibly can. And the more you can control that, so if you can get yourself to where you're taking a 4, 5, 6, 7 second inhale, you pause at the top for a second, and then you double that exhale. And you're going to do that for 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time. Not so you're getting lightheaded, so you're pausing between those breaths, but so you can really start to control the state of your overall nervous system. Not just once a day, but 3 times a day. So you do it in the morning. That will help balance morning cortisol. Somewhere in the middle of the day, so you don't get just wound up and get this thing running so hard, your nervous system running so fast that it's just on autopilot. And then, of course, after dinner, but sometime before bed, it's a great practice to have, especially if we're trying to prepare ourselves for sleep and shift the hormones so we get a little bit more melatonin production. This type of breathing is absolutely fantastic. So again, just quick review here. The root causes: stress is a big one, and that could be an acute stress. It could be as simple as, not as simple, that's the wrong word. You could have a job change. You could have gone through a divorce. You could have gone through a loss of a loved one, a loss of an animal. You could have lost, one of maybe your best friend, like your dog or something. These moments could be the thing that triggers your body into this mast cell activation syndrome that creates this hypersensitivity, the degranulation of the actual mast cells. And that acute trigger can now create this syndrome of effect. It also could be prolonged kind of under the radar stress, where we're just we have a tough job, or we're in a tough relationship, or like I said, COVID lasting for a couple of years, just this constant stress being there. So stress, number one. Food sensitivities too. We're going to have to clean up the diet and really tighten that up. Another podcast, I talk about how much we and where we can really focus on in there. The environment, take a look around your house, see if there's some chemicals. Even if you've been using those all the time, that is probably the biggest thing that I'll hear. And it's a little bit of a red flag. I'll say, but doc, I've always eaten this, or I've always used those chemicals. Not anymore. Those are the ones we're going to have to pull them back out of the body and get really, really tight, almost boring. We got to get really tightened down the window here. So we stop all the things that are triggering, the things that are creating the sensitivity in the body. And last but not least, mold. We're going to have to pay attention to this. You're probably going to need to get with a provider eventually to figure out how do you mediate, how do you get rid of this mold in the body? And then that part of that is cleaning up the gut and using some binders and get rid of it. But first place to start for everyone listening to this podcast today, you start by controlling your breath. That controls your central nervous system. And that is one of the more powerful things you can do. All right, folks, with that being said, keep doing your thing, keep sharing it out, keep spreading love, and always continue to making sure that we're taking deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. God be awesome.